Good morning, everybody. Today we launch Operation Restoring Justice. And as far as the people of this country is concerned, frankly, these measures can't come soon enough. As you know, we've been running over the course of the last 6 weeks our very successful crime campaign. It's seen us rise further in the polls. It's seen great new recruits, Vanessa Frake and Colin Sutton, joining our party. And today is the last instalment of that campaign ahead of our party conference in Birmingham on the 5th and 6th of September. Today we're going to talk about illegal immigration, in particular the boat crossings, but there's more, of course, to the story than that, and perhaps it's appropriate that we're here this morning after yesterday, the scenes in Dover that took place as 650 people arrived. 650 people yesterday arrived into Dover, and last I heard this morning, there are many more boats on the way today. That will take us up to about 52,000 people since this Prime Minister and this government came into power. The mood in the country around this issue is a mix between total despair and rising anger. And I would say this, that without action, without somehow the contract between the government and the people being renewed, without some trust coming back, then I fear deeply that that anger will grow. In fact, I think there is now, as a result of this, a genuine threat to public order, and that is the very last thing that we want. And I've been saying, of course, for a long time, that it's a growing threat to our national security. And we've seen just recently some arrests made of people that came by boat, and they are suspected of being involved in some form of terrorism. Huge numbers of undocumented young males who throw their passports and iPhone into the English Channel when they get to the 12-mile line, something that I've been out and filmed. These huge numbers of people do constitute a threat. And I suppose the growing anger in the country over the course of the last few weeks is a cultural one, in the sense that many of these young men come from countries in which women aren't even second-class citizens. And frankly, the public have now just had enough. And what began as a protest of mothers and concerned citizens outside the Bell Hotel in Epping has now spread right across the country. And all of it really poses one big fundamental question. Whose side are you on? Are you on the side of women and children being safe on our streets? Or are you on the side of outdated international treaties backed up by a series of dubious courts? The Channel crisis began with a trickle of dinghies in 2018. The numbers in 2018 and 19 were very small indeed. But I began to realize in early 2020 that virtually nobody that came via this route was being deported. They would have been, even in Tony Blair's government time. If you'd done that, you would have been deported, no question about it. And so in early 2020, I repeatedly went out into the English Channel, filming what was going on, saying you may as well put a sign on the White Cliffs of Dover saying everyone welcome. And unless we start deporting people, I predicted this would turn into, and yes, I use the word, invasion. But 180,000 people later, what other word could possibly describe what has been going on? It is an invasion, as these young men illegally break into our country. Well, I did my best in 2020. I warned everybody. I said, unless we deport, the crisis will worsen considerably. But I'm afraid that the Conservative government for the first few years, did literally nothing. Literally nothing. And then belatedly, they put in place a Rwanda plan, they put in place legislation, but none of it could work because they hadn't got the courage to face up to the legal obstacles that made sure, despite spending huge amounts of money on these plans, that nothing was actually going to happen. Rishi's Stop the Boats was a total failure, and frankly, anything that party or people who were ministers at the time in that government have to say, we've got to take with a very, very large pinch of salt. And then, of course, we had Keir Starmer, the lawyer, the man whose second speech as Prime Minister in the House of Commons was where he outlined his love for the European Court of Human Rights, a party, many of whom have done very well out of the human rights industry. Smash the gangs was never, ever going to work. And even as we speak, despite the £800 million we've given the French, even as we speak, there are French naval vessels escorting these boats across to a 12-mile line where they'll be picked up by Border Force or our volunteers for the RNLI if it's a busy day and Border Force simply can't cope. And now what happens is the French give them all life jackets. And when they're picked up by Border Force give the life jackets back to the French so they can reuse them on the next journey. I mean, we're literally witnessing two governments colluding in their support of criminal activity. Well, this issue has become a scourge of modern Britain. Just think about the hotels. Think about the houses of multiple occupancy, and not just the cost of it, but think how unfair that is. Unfair to the 1.3 million British people currently on the social housing list. Unfair to those who have legally made their way into the United Kingdom. It's unfair. And the cost, frankly, is eye-watering. Official figures show the whole thing costs about £7 billion a year, but that doesn't account for the massive scale of operations in the English Channel every day. It doesn't account for the amount of police time and court time that is taken up with crimes that are committed by those who frankly shouldn't be here and have come illegally. Our proposals will save, over the course of the next decades, tens and possibly even hundreds of billions of pounds. By the end of a first Parliament, we will have saved a huge amount of money. I understand the public have had enough of this, but here's what we have to do to make Operation Restoring Justice actually work. We have to leave the ECHR, no ifs, no buts. It may have been a good idea 80 years ago. Frankly, it isn't today. We have to repeal the Human Rights Act of 1998, brought in by a Blair government, many of whose families seem to do rather well off the back of it. We will, for a 5-year period, disapply the 1951 Refugee Convention and any other barriers that can be used by lawyers in this country to prevent deportations, to prevent the right thing from happening. We'll create a legal duty for the Home Secretary to remove those that come illegally. And crucially, we will detain all illegal migrants who come, and we will do so immediately. The only way we will stop the boats is by detaining and deporting absolutely anyone that comes via that route. And if we do that, the boats will stop coming within days, because there would be no incentive to pay a trafficker to get into this country. If you come to the UK illegally, you will be detained and deported and never, ever allowed to stay, period. That is our big message from today, and we're the first party to put out plans that could actually make that work. We will stop the boats from coming. There'll be no more incentive to pay traffickers. Public trust will be restored, and we genuinely are the only party that can be trusted on this. I am the only party leader that has been clear and consistent on this issue over the course of the last 5 years. And I have a feeling that what we're doing today with Operation Restoring Justice is going to be very popular in the wider country indeed. Now, to go through some of the operational phases we're going to need to go through and the structures we're going to need to set up, I'm going to invite Zia Yusuf onto the stage.
Thank you, Nigel, and thank you all for coming. Look, for decades now, successive Tory and Labour governments promised to get tough on illegal immigration. And yet, year after year, tens of thousands of fighting-age males, as Nigel said, have arrived on our beaches. In fact, the total number of illegal immigrants in the country now stands at least 1 million. The true number could be considerably higher than that. There's little doubt that the United Kingdom is being invaded. In fact, more people have arrived on our beaches illegally over the last 8 years than stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. And they're rewarded for this by a political class that puts them up in hotels at the British taxpayers' expense, given free meals, free healthcare, free TV licenses, and as our Doge team has revealed, even free trips to the safari park and to the cinema. Even those that commit heinous crimes are routinely defended by so-called human rights lawyers who succeed in preventing even convicted rapist illegal migrants from being deported. All thanks to a legal system that prioritises the rights of foreign citizens over our own. Well, the patience of the British people is now exhausted. We're unwilling to accept that Britain's borders should be open and undefended, unwilling to accept that Britain must cede its sovereignty to foreign courts, and unwilling to accept that our own veterans who served our nation with valour and distinction be evicted from their homes to house fighting-age males from Iraq and Afghanistan who turned up on our beaches uninvited. This is a national emergency. It's a national security emergency, and it's time to put British people first. So, upon winning the next election, a reform government will launch Operation Restoring Justice, a 5-year emergency programme to track down, detain and deport all illegal immigrants in the United Kingdom. It will also immediately stop the boats from coming by sending a very clear message that being in our country illegally now has an ironclad consequence: immediate removal. Deportation is the ultimate deterrent. Our plan combines an uncompromising legal reset with national-scale, relentless enforcement through a new UK deportation command and a powerful foreign policy campaign. As Prime Minister, Nigel Farage will direct every instrument of state to ensure illegal immigrants are detained and deported. Reform will pass the Illegal Migration Mass Deportation Act to ensure that no activist judge can stop deportations. We will leave the ECHR, but that is nowhere near enough to get this job done. We must also repeal, not disapply, but repeal the Human Rights Act and replace it with a British Bill of Rights. We'll create a legal obligation for the Home Secretary to deport everyone illegally in the country, and will disapply all international treaties that are used to keep illegal migrants in this country. And yes, that means disapplying the 1951 Refugee Convention and the UN Convention Against Torture and the Council of Europe Anti-Trafficking Convention. That is a non-exhaustive list. These treaties will otherwise be used by activist judges to frustrate deportations, even after the repeals of the Human Rights Act and even after the UK leaving the ECHR. We will create sweeping new detention powers for the Home Secretary without Hardy L. Singh constraints. That means illegal migrants can be detained until they are deported. This is essential because activist lawyers routinely use Hardy L. Singh to secure their client's bail, after which the client disappears. And we'll pass a law that makes clear that if you came to this country illegally, you will never be granted asylum. End of story. This will mean all asylum claims will become inadmissible if made by a person within this Act's scope. So if you came to the country illegally, you'll never be allowed to stay. It strips the Home Office, the immigration tribunals and the higher courts of jurisdiction to even consider asylum claims, because a claim that cannot be considered cannot suspend removal and therefore cannot delay a flight. Nothing less than what we've just described will do. And when Nigel's Prime Minister, there will not be a lawyer nor a judge in the country that will be able to prevent a deportation flight from leaving. If you come to the UK illegally, you will receive a lifetime ban from ever coming back to our country. Re-entering after deportation will become a criminal offence, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. Deliberately destroying your identity documents, having come here illegally, will also become a criminal offence, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. We will pair this legislative reset with a UK deportation command. That is a dedicated force to identifying, detaining and deporting illegal migrants at scale. We'll create a cutting-edge data fusion centre that will automatically share data between the police, the Home Office, the NHS, the DVLA, HMRC and banks. This will allow Deportation Command to relentlessly track down and detain all those who entered our country illegally. We'll build capacity to detain up to 24,000 illegal migrants at a time. That enables us to deport up to 288,000 illegal migrants a year. Detention will mean deportation. No chance of bail, no chance of absconding. We will expand charter flights to 5 departures every day, and to guarantee success, His Majesty's Royal Air Force will keep a Voyager aircraft on standby as a hot spare. So even if a plane has mechanical issues, flights will not be stopped, deportations will not be delayed. And beyond our shores, our Foreign Office will act with the urgency of a nation that is determined. Return agreements will be secured. Countries of origin will take back their illegals. Where persuasion and financial incentives fail, we will use leverage. If a country refuses to take back their illegal migrants, we will stop issuing visas to people from that country, and if necessary, we will sanction them. Let there be no doubt, those who arrive illegally will be detained, deported, and banned for life from re-entering the United Kingdom. And this is not just a national security emergency, it's a fiscal emergency too. Right now, Britain is spending more than £7 billion every year on the costs of illegal immigration, and that excludes the huge cost items like the burden on the NHS. Billions are spent on hotels, community housing and welfare for those who have no respect for our laws. Those who obey the rules are forced to pay for those who break them. The cost of deporting those who are illegally will be £10 billion over 5 years, but in that same period, our plan will save the taxpayer over £17 billion. So the net saving to the British taxpayer will be very, very significant over 5 years. And over a decade, the savings will exceed £42 billion. That is money that is returned to hard-working families, to our schools, to our NHS, and to rebuilding Britain's prosperity. This is a transformative plan that will mean those who are here illegally will be deported at unprecedented speed and scale. And I want to be clear that with Nigel as Prime Minister, a Reform government will show unflinching resolve to ensure that Britain regains control of its borders. The hopes and the dreams of British people and their children rests on their government's willingness to do what it takes to defend and secure our country's borders and keep them safe. A Reform government will ensure that the United Kingdom will once again be a proud sovereign nation with full control of its borders. And it is in that sovereignty that lies the foundation of our country's next chapter. one in which our country is secure, one in which our people are prosperous, and one in which Britain is powerful again. Thank you very much, and we're going to move to questions.
I'll go this way. This is my hearing. Zia, thank you very much indeed. Right, we have a pretty extensive list of questions from the press, and the first up is Ben Wright from the BBC.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farage. Your plans could mean sending thousands of asylum seekers back to countries where they might face imprisonment, torture, even death. Does that bother you at all? And what happens if countries refuse to take people back?
Does it bother me? Of course it bothers me, but what really bothers me is what is happening on the streets of our country. What really bothers me is what is happening to British citizens. What really bothers me is, and you've seen this from the Bell Hotel onwards, the growing concern with justifiable evidence that women and girls are far less safe on the streets than they were before this began. So it's all about whose side are you on? Whose side are you on? Are you on the side of the British people or international treaties? Now, where countries, and I think Zia laid that out, that it's going to be a carrot and stick approach to it, but if we can't get deals with certain countries, then we think this country has considerably more muscle, diplomatic muscle, than perhaps those in Westminster currently recognise, then we will have to find other locations. And, you know, we're going to be talking to Albania, we'll talk to Rwanda, we will find solutions. Catherine Foster from GB News.
Thank you, Catherine Foster, GB News. Nigel Farage, last September you told GB News that it was a political impossibility to deport hundreds of thousands of people and that we simply couldn't do it. What has changed your mind that you now believe that you can?
The political impossibility was deporting millions and millions of people, and that's where the argument had gone. We had a situation, a political difficulty within Reform UK. This does happen to parties. They do have difficulties and problems. We had a problem that one of our MPs, who's no longer an MP, was talking about deporting entire communities, including people who've been born here. And frankly, we found that unacceptable. And so I just did not want, I think you can quote me for another interview, to get dragged down the route of mass deportations at that stage. We have sorted out that political internal difficulty that we had, and since that time, the work has been done on a credible plan so that we can deport hundreds of thousands of people over the 5 years of a Reform government. Thank you. Harry Horton, ITV.
Thank you very much. Harry Horton, ITV News. Nigel Farage, you've said that you can't be held responsible for everything that happens in the world. But if someone says that if you deport me, I'll be tortured, I'll face abuse, surely there is some responsibility on you to stop that from happening. And secondly, if I may, how far back does this go? Where do you draw the line? You say you're going to deport everyone who's arrived here illegally. What are the parameters for that?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, how far back you go with this is the difficulty, and I accept that. You know, and the next question that Zia and I will get asked is, what about those that are here illegally and have got children? So, you know, I'm not standing here telling you all of this is easy, all of this is straightforward. You know, and we had, of course, with the Windrush row, we had a situation there where people who'd come 50, 60, in fact, nearly 70 years ago had faulty paperwork. So there is an exercise of common sense that has to come in here. But do we realistically think, Zia, we can deport 500,000, 600,000 people in the lifetime of the first Parliament?
Totally, yeah. I mean, so look, one of the key points to make here is if you look at the population who are illegally, and by the way, this is difficult because you're trying to count the uncountable almost by definition. You're talking north of 650,000 adults without children who are in this country illegally. And by the way, those are the ones the British people are most concerned about. They're the ones who in some cases are terrorising local communities, hanging around bus shelters. Let's start with deporting them. Let's get that done promptly and efficiently.
Yeah, and of course, once we start this, people will not in future be coming to Britain illegally. The precedent for this is Australia in 2012, where within 2 weeks of Tony Abbott taking the right actions, the boats stopped coming from Indonesia. The solution to this is not difficult. It's been the lack of political will to put in measure the right places is why we're now in this position where, as I said earlier, the public are between a mixture of utter despair but increasing and growing anger. Serena Bankin-Singh from Sky.
You've said that you're going to detain anyone who arrives via small boats. Will that apply to women and girls? And what about unaccompanied children? Will they remain in Britain while their parents are turfed out? And then you said you would leave the UN Torture Convention. Australia and the US haven't done this. Are you comfortable of the risk of people being killed or tortured if they're sent back to their country of origin? And will pulling